Hi, my name is Russell Bowyer and I'm going to be talking today about how you can increase the sales of your restaurant business. So if you have a restaurant business and you'd like to increase your sales, but more importantly your profits of that business, then this video is worthwhile watching. But I'm going to turn that on its head a little bit, as sales are the outcome or the output from a number of inputs. What I'm going to be focusing on is those inputs, or the various profit metrics that directly impact the revenues or the sales of your restaurant. So I've prepared a document with all the current figures and then some targeted figures that we are going to plug into a piece of software to see the effect we can have by focusing on 7 key areas of your restaurant business. So without further ado, I'm just going to switch across to the summary that I prepared and let's have a look at those numbers. So what we have in front of us now is a summary of numbers of a restaurant business. And this summary is made up of 2 columns, our current numbers and our targeted numbers. The top section of this document represents the inputs, and then the bottom section represents the outputs. And it's the inputs that have a direct impact on the sales or revenue, and in this case of the restaurant business. So let's go through those numbers one by one. So the first number we have is the number of customers, and of course that's going to be the same in both columns because that's our starting point. The next number though is a very important one, and that's the average customer spend. Currently our average customer spend is £49.50, but we're looking to target to increase that to £65. And there are various ways in which you can do that. And the average customer spend is the amount that your customers spend when they're at your restaurant, which would include what they spend on the table, what they spend at the bar. That becomes the total bill that they pay at the end of the evening. One obvious way to increase the average customer spend is to increase prices, but that's not the only way to increase your average spend. A good way to have people spend more in your restaurant is to ask them engaging questions. So for example, when they're ordering, you may want to ask them if they want extras with their meal. Also, sometimes by packaging your menus up into 2-course meals or 3-course meals, this can have an impact on the average customer spend. The next number that we're going to look at here is the number of times customers return to your business. The current number of times is twice in a year, but we're looking to target that to 4 times. And there are various ways in which we can achieve that. By having a better engagement with your customers, and perhaps making a note of important anniversary dates, so their birthdays and wedding anniversaries, and get these customers on a mailing list or certainly an email list so that you can then invite them to come for special occasion at your restaurant. So by engaging better with your customers, you're more likely to entice them back to visit you more often. The next number, which is represented in percentage terms, relates to the number of customers that never return. In other words, this is your customer defection rate. Remembering that we can never please everybody all of the time, but also recognizing that by understanding how many customers never return or where we upset customers, by knowing what percentage that is and why people are leaving or not returning again, we can do something about it. So by focusing in on this number, we can have an impact on future customers and maybe even convert those customers that didn't want to come back by speaking to them and asking what was wrong and making improvements. So the current percentage is 13%, and we're looking to target to reduce that to 7.5%. The next number relates to audience reach, or number of visitors. So for example, the number of visitors to your website. Currently that stands at 9,840, but we're looking to increase that to 15,840, which is 6,000. And that represents 500 extra visitors to your website per month. That's very achievable, and that will be achieved by engaging with a company, or if you're able to do this yourself, to improve your search engine optimization of your website. And what that means is that your website performs better in the search engines of something like Google. So it means that if your pages are optimized better, you're more likely to appear on the searches for keywords that are applicable to your restaurant business. The next percentage is the capture rate of those visitors to your website. Currently, we've got that at 0.85%, but we're looking to increase that to 1.3%. That percentage represents the conversion of the number of visitors that take action when they visit your website. And this may mean picking up the telephone and calling you, or filling out a form, or if you've got an online booking system, making a booking at your restaurant. There are ways of improving that by improving the look and feel of your website to make it more customer focused and to make sure there are clear calls to action on the website. The final metric, again, is a percentage, is the conversion rate of those visitors to your website that have taken action. So in other words, of the 0.85% of the figure above of 9,840, 45% of those become customers and actually visit your restaurant. So currently the conversion rate is 45%, but we're looking to increase that to 60%. All of the numbers in the left-hand column are what make up the sales or revenue of the restaurant, which in this case is 125,458. Each of those inputs have an effect on the output or the outcome, which represents the sales or revenue of your restaurant business. The numbers in the right-hand column are the targeted numbers, and this is where we're targeting our inputs to directly affect our output or the outcome, which is to increase our sales or revenues of our restaurant business. Now at the moment we've got some question marks in how much that is, and the only way for us to find that out is to plug those numbers into our increased profit software, which I'll do in a moment. So now we've reviewed all of the current inputs and all of the targeted amounts for us to grow our restaurant business. I'm going to be putting those into increased profit software to see the impact on the sales and also the profits of our restaurant business. So I'm just going to transfer across to that now. So what you have in front of you now is increased profit software. And what I've done to save a bit of time, I've input the numbers that were on that sheet that we were just looking at. So at the top we can see the sales of 125,458, which is the current sales for this restaurant, which is cost of sales of just over £49,000 and our overheads of 52,600, which leaves a profit of 23,302. Looking further down, we can see that I've entered in the opening customer numbers of 1373, the average transaction value or the average customer spend of £49.50, the number of times our customers return at the moment, which is 2, our customer defection rate or those customers that never return of 13%, our current audience reach or the number of visitors we get to our website of 9,840, the number of those visitors that convert to leads or prospects of 0.85%, and finally our conversion of prospects into customers, which represents sales, and in this case currently sitting at 45%. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch to the working sheet, and then I'm going to enter the various adjustments from the right hand column, which were the targeted input amounts. So the first one we have is our audience reach or number of visitors. And if you remember, we were going to increase that by 6,000. So that becomes 15,840. The next metric was the percentage of those visitors that convert into leads. And we were going to look at increasing that to 1.3%. The next metric we are looking at is the conversion of prospects into customers. So we were going to look at increasing that to 60%. Next, we have our customer defection rate, or the number of customers that never return, and we were looking to halve that to 7.5%. Our average transaction value, or the average customer spend, we were looking to increase that from £49.50 to £65. Then we move on to the number of times our customers return, and we were looking to increase that from 2 to 4 times a year. All those metrics that affect the outcome, which in this case is our sales and profits, I'm now going to focus on the top part of this screen. The first line represents our sales. So to remind ourselves, our starting position was 125,458. The effect of increasing each one of those metrics the way we have done, our sales have increased to 360,393, which is a percentage increase of 187%. In money terms, that's an increase of just over £234,000. What's more important is that our profit, which originally stood at 23,302, has now increased to £165,438, which represents a 610% increase, or in money terms, 142,136. Now, it's possible that with that increase and with that volume of sales, that you'll probably have to incur additional costs in terms of overheads. So, for example, you may have to employ more staff, and that is an additional cost. Your utility costs, electric and gas, will probably go up as well. And there's going to be a number of expenses that will be impacted by the increase in volume of the business. If I look here, I'm going to actually just put a number in there which feels about right, and I'm going to increase that by £45,000. Of course, you would have to go into a bit more detail and work out what that increase should be, but I think that £45,000 would cover it. And even with that increase, our profits are still sitting at £97,000, which represents a nearly 417% increase from where we were before. So let's just go back and review each of those increases to see how realistic that is. So starting off with our audience reach or visitors, we increased that by 6,000, which is 500 per month. Now that's very achievable, and by doing some work on your website, perhaps you haven't got a blog or you don't blog enough, perhaps you don't have a Facebook page, perhaps you don't have Twitter or Instagram. So perhaps by doing a bit more online marketing and social media posts, you could quite easily increase your audience reach and visitors to your website. And an extra 500 a month is not actually out of the question. And more likely, once you engage the services of someone that can actually do this for you, it's very likely that you'll surpass the 500 extra per month. Visitor to lead conversions, or in other words, your capture rate of visitors, we increased from 0.85 to 1.3. And again, I think that's very achievable by tweaking your website, making it more customer focused, and perhaps even thinking about or making sure that it's mobile friendly. All of these things make towards a better conversion rate. So making sure that the call to action is clear, these would all contribute to getting a better conversion rate. Looking at the conversion of our prospects, in other words, the number of people that take action on our website by either phoning us or by filling out an online form, increasing that from 45% to 60% is again very achievable. And we can do this by focusing in on why people aren't converting in the first place. We can ask powerful questions. I would suggest for this one, you not only speak to your employees, but you engage with your customers, get some customer feedback, and they will give you some very good insights into why perhaps they aren't converting. So don't just speak to customers that convert, speak to the people that don't, because then you can find out what it is they were looking for. Then you can look to see whether or not you can provide that service to them. The following percentage was our customer defection rate, which relates to customers that never return, currently sitting at 13%, and we've looked to reduce that to 7.5%. I think again that's very achievable, and certainly once we start making improvements to the restaurant and focusing on our customers and focusing on improving things, it's less likely that people will defect. But also, it'll be important to ask people that you know have defected and chosen not to come again, ask them why that is. Because if you understand why, you can do something about it. And that's one of the most important things of calculating each one of these metrics, because once you have the metric, you can then focus on improving each one. Because without them, you don't know whether what you're doing is having a positive effect or not. Yes, you might see your sales are increasing, but you may not necessarily know why. The next number relates to our average transaction value or average customer spend, and we looked at increasing that from the present £49.50 to £65. We've already mentioned that to increase that is to encourage your customers to spend more when they're with you. And one of the best ways with this particular metric to find ways of increasing it would be to have a brainstorming session with your employees, but again, get some feedback from your customers. I always remember I carried out a customer advisory board with customers for one of my businesses. And interestingly, one of the things that came out of that customer advisory board was that I should be putting my prices up. So that's a very obvious way to increase your average transaction value. But there are lots of ways to increase that. The next metric is the number of times customers return. Presently sitting at 2, but we're looking to increase that to 4 times a year. We've already talked about ways that we could do that by engaging with customers a bit more, finding out when special anniversaries are, for example, their birthday or wedding anniversaries and so on. Invite them back and put on a special occasion for them, maybe even give them a bottle of wine or a bottle of Prosecco or champagne, or if that's too much, to perhaps give them a discount off of things like that. And people love those type of things, and that's more likely to encourage them to come back for more. There are all sorts of ways that you can use to increase the number of times customers return. But once you know how many times they do return, you can then start to focus on how to improve on this particular metric. I really hope you've got something great from this video and that you can go away and increase the sales and profits of your restaurant business, and that you now understand the power of the inputs that have a direct impact on the outputs, in this case of the sales and profits of a restaurant business. More often than not, when people set targets in the way that I've described, they tend to surpass those targets and get better results. You've also witnessed the power of leverage of working on a number of inputs that has a massive impact on the ultimate outcome. In this case, you saw huge percentage increases in both sales and profits. If you'd like to find out more about increased profit software and how this can help you to increase your sales and profits in your restaurant, there is a link below if you want to click on that. I would appreciate if you can give us a thumbs up down below, and if you've got any questions, please pop a comment below. Also, please by all means subscribe to our YouTube channel, and thank you very much for listening. My name is Russell Bowyer, and I'm from bowraven.com.